So what do you think happens when small teams build the games that they want to play? Clair Obscur Expedition 33 wasn't built by some massive studio chasing trends. It was brought to life by passionate developers who wanted to create a version of their beloved Final Fantasy. Tainted Grail is this game which delivers a deep, immersive, systemic experience that could only be created by someone absolutely obsessed with Skyrim. Unlethal Company, this wild horror comedy game, exploded because it connects directly to the community of players who are its audience, a community which the creator is a part of. These games weren't made by committees or in conference rooms. They were made by small teams of, well, fans. Small teams of developers who play, obsess over, and understand the genres they're working in. And that's the common thread behind so many of these games we're seeing blow up today. The people behind them aren't guessing what players want, because they're the players too.
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
So let's take a minute to talk about why that matters, what the benefits are that small teams have, and what happens when games are made by people who actually play them.
You're fighting to change things.
For those who come after. Right?
Vision is a term which gets thrown around a lot, and it's something which is crucial to a successful game and something that smaller teams have a big advantage in. Take Kenshi, for example. This hardcore survival game, developed over more than a decade by Chris Hunt, has an identity which oozes through the experience. The game's sprawling open world, brutally unforgiving survival systems, and the sheer freedom it gives players all come from that single, undiluted vision.
So my qualification is just lifetime of playing video games.
That vision was steered by what Chris believed he wanted out of a game.
So every time I play a game, they do this wrong, they do this right, they do this wrong. And I think I could make a game that does this right and this right.
It's possible because, for whatever reason, the team remained small. Compare this to what happens in a typical AAA studio. These projects bring together hundreds and sometimes even thousands of developers across dozens of departments, sometimes even time zones. Each department, art, design, sound, marketing, production, has its own goals, and as the project grows, so do the number of stakeholders. This benefit of massive scale usually just results in what's commonly referred to as the too many cooks in the kitchen thing. Take titles like Concord or Star Wars Outlaws. Both had huge teams and massive budgets, but despite all that headcount, they struggled to deliver a meaningful experience. They lacked cohesive vision. That's often what happens when too many voices shape the product. The original creative vision gets buried under layers of compromise and just diluted. You end up with features added and then taken away, not because they serve the core design, but because they chase trends for whatever the biggest audience is currently playing. The final product feels like this patchwork of ideas with none of them really standing out. I'm not saying it can't be done on large teams. If you've ever seen the documentary on the development of God of War, you've seen what a strong vision Cory Barlog had and how he was able to deliver it. But the larger the team, the more work that becomes, and inevitably, that vision gets diluted the further you are from the central vision holder. Maybe there are a few folk in the industry who can do this, but to be honest, they're rare, and the process usually destroys them. I'm saying that's where smaller teams have this advantage. I've witnessed this myself. Dawn of War had like 40 core developers. We all fit in one relatively small area of one floor of the studio. Being able to easily walk over and chat with the vision holder, it has obvious results. You don't have to go far to get the answer you need. Rather than having to rely on loads of documentation which no one ever reads, or team presentations which folks half pay attention to, the smaller team can live and breathe the vision because they're constantly being exposed to the folks who hold that vision. You go out to lunch with them. You chat about the game on a day-to-day basis with them. The games themselves are proof that this works. When a project can be steered by a focused, smaller team, or even a single creator, every element in the game feels like it belongs. There's this confidence in the design of the game, a willingness to stick with what works for the game rather than what's trending in the market. Players notice this intent, and it's part of why these games stand out amid a sea of generic yet big budget releases. I can't tell you how many times I've seen great ideas get crushed as the creative tries to accommodate the ever-changing whim of whatever stakeholder is in the room that day. Of course, there's another advantage that comes from this clarity. Smaller teams don't just keep their vision intact, they also excel at honing in on a specific, focused niche. Instead of spreading themselves thin trying to please everyone, they double down on the purity of an idea. I never would have thought that Power Washing Simulator would have been a good game, let alone the insane success that it is. Then again, I never would have thought that idle games or word puzzles or a hardcore horror game about little kids in monstrous toys would be a hit either. The reality is, there are over 3 billion people playing games today. That's a third of the population on the planet. Those people all have unique, varied, and very different interests. The result? Well, if you are passionate about something, like, say, fishing, there's a solid chance there are others who are passionate about it as well. If you make the best damn fishing game you can, focused exclusively on that, it's likely to find a decent-sized audience. But big teams need to take big bets. They're extremely expensive, and so to offset that expense, they need to try to make games that will appeal to a massive audience. Hence, we see the same kinds of games coming out again and again and again. The companies believe there's a big audience because they've seen other similar games do well and try to hit that big audience. Small teams, though, they have a superpower. They don't need to attract a massive audience in order to be successful. It's not bad if they do, of course, but it's not as critical. This means they can start focusing in on what I've started referring to as a hyper niche. Take Blacksmith Master, for example. This is a game about making swords, shields, all as a blacksmith, and nothing else. Just hammering away. I'd wager there aren't millions of people out there that really have the fantasy of being a blacksmith, but there's definitely enough people to support a small team, in this case, a single developer, to make a game for it and make a living out of it. And up until now, no one had given them a game about blacksmithing, so they're dying for it. Or for a more recognizable idea, what about Clair Obscur Expedition 33? Developed by a small team over 6 years. Yeah, okay, they had contractors and whatever, but the core team was still small. They concentrated on a Final Fantasy-inspired narrative and a deep, satisfying combat system. It's not bloated by unnecessary systems like cooking or a battle pass. That's not to say they don't have deep systems, but they're all focused on the essence of the game, the combat, the narrative delivery. Now, is that Final Fantasy niche a massive audience? Well, no, not compared to Call of Duty. But given they've sold over 2 million units, it's an audience which is certainly big enough because they've stayed small. And we're seeing this kind of focused niche pay off for other smaller teams too. Lethal Company, digging a hole in a backyard. These are extremely narrow ideas, exceptionally well executed by small teams. AAA just can't do that because they're having to hedge too many bets to cover the overwhelming expense of the team size. You can't pitch blacksmithing as the next Call of Duty expansion. It just won't work. This hyper niche concept is a huge opportunity, and it's only going to get bigger the more people play games, which is increasing every day. But of course, this hyper niching is only possible because of how well the team understands their audience.
What's happening?
Get out of here! I got the beer!
Lethal Company was not the first horror game the developer made. He started making games back in 2011 on Roblox, where he made, that's right, horror games. He crafted multiple horror games, played them, lived them, and breathed them for many years before he made Lethal Company. The reason the game was so successful is it's a great game, but also because Zekers understands what the audience wants, because he is the audience. Back when I was working at Relic, we had an opportunity to work with Games Workshop. This was, to say we were excited is an understatement. You see, the designers on the game all played Warhammer. We each had multiple armies. We played together on the weekends. We were already big fans of the IP, and we understood it well because we were the audience. We also knew RTS games really well because we'd been making them for multiple years. It was a bit of a perfect storm, and out of that came Dawn of War. At the end of the day, games get made for an audience. If the developers don't understand what that audience wants, how on earth are they going to make a game which appeals to them? This is what happens too often on large teams. In order to scale and meet the demands of the project, you have to hire people who may not actually know what kind of game you're making. Once you get to a certain size, this is just kind of inevitable. But every developer on a game is making decisions about the game every day. Every time an artist creates a texture or a level designer places a garbage can, that is a decision that's being made that could impact the audience. If the developer is the audience, then it's far more likely those decisions will be something the audience will enjoy. Honestly, this is why WoW is so successful. Everyone on the team, we consumed not just World of Warcraft, but other MMOs. Agree or not, end of the day, every developer I worked with on World of Warcraft loved the game, and pretty much everyone played it a lot outside of work. WoW was a big team, but was also a very well-known game. It was easy for us to demand that people on the team knew it. When it comes to other games, that kind of pervasive knowledge just isn't possible, so the smaller teams have an advantage. Let's say you're making a turn-based MOBA about fishing. You have a clear vision, and you're leaning in on your niche. Clearly, it's a MOBA about fishing. If your idea is also to have 300 people on the project, it's unlikely that you'll find 300 people who are passionate about turn-based MOBA fishing. Smaller teams are less likely to have that problem. Look, it's no secret that oftentimes the decision makers at AAA companies don't even play the games that they're responsible for greenlighting. That the stakeholders for projects aren't gamers. And this isn't going to change. But it is a competitive advantage that smaller teams have, so long as they lean into and make the kinds of games that they love to play, rather than the kinds of games that they think there is some massive audience for. That's what AAA companies are doing. Don't do that. There's so many other benefits that small teams have. Developers need to be able to use the tool and create content. Many devs have to be multifaceted rather than specialized, and so much more. And of course, it's not all hunky-dory roses and teacups. Smaller teams make mistakes are harder to rectify, that every decision has way more weight, and usually far less funding. But my suggestion, my message here is stay small. Make what you are deeply passionate about. Look, making games is hard enough. Why would you make something you don't want to if you don't have to? If we can learn anything from these indie success stories, it's that staying true to your vision, focusing on your niche, and deeply understanding your audience is the way to success. I hope you found this interesting. I have a Patreon. It's right here. Come support me. It helps me make more stuff like this. For now though, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.